You may be seated. I now call this sitting of the Honourable House of Representatives to order on this, the 4th day of November 2025. Call of the roll.
Mr. Clark, Mr. Green, Dr. Holness, Dr. Chang, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Bartlett, Ms. Grange, Dr. Tufton, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Montague, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Charles Jr., Mr. Morgan, Ambassador Marks, Mr. Samuda, Dr. Wheatley, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Terrelong, Mr. Witter, Mrs. Dalrymple Filbert, Ms. Morrison, Ms. Lee, Mr. Donovan Williams, Mr. Main, Ms. Crawford, Mr. Delroy Williams, Ms. Hamilton, Mr. Sivright, Mr. Azon, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Mr. Buchanan, Mr. Bunting, Ms. Burchell, Dr. Campbell, Mr. Cousins, Mr. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Dr. Dawes, Mr. Golding, Mr. Gordon, Mr. Hales, Mr. Hines, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Ms. Jess, Mrs. Malahoo Fort, Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Morris, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Newell, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Ms. Perkis, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Dr. Russell, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Smith, Mr. Vaz, and Mr. Warmington. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Clark. I take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to all members of this Honourable House, the media, or visitors in the gallery, and to the many Jamaicans joining us online and through the various broadcast platforms. As we gather here today, we do so against the backdrop of a great national hardship. Hurricane Melissa has left an indelible mark on our island. Communities have been torn apart, livelihoods destroyed, and far too many of our citizens are now facing the daunting task of rebuilding their lives from the ground up. We are mindful that the impact of this disaster has not spared this Honourable House. Among us are members who themselves have suffered devastating loss to their homes, to community infrastructure, and to the lives and livelihoods of their constituents. We hold them and the people they represent in our thoughts and in our prayers. At this time, I invite all members and those present in the gallery to stand with me in observing 1 minute of silence in honor of the lives lost during the passage of Hurricane Melissa. Thank you. You may be seated. Though they are no longer with us, their memories remain woven into the fabric of our national story. Even in the midst of widespread loss, the true spirit of Jamaica continues to shine through. Across the island, citizens have reached out to one another with generosity and resolve, offering shelter, comfort, and hope. It is these moments of shared hardship that we are reminded that Jamaica's greatest strength lies not in our resources, but in our unity and compassion as a people. We are also deeply grateful for the resounding response from the international community and for the tireless efforts of our national agencies, first responders, volunteers across the island who continue to serve with courage and care. Their actions embody the resilience and generosity that define us as a people. Members, the days ahead will not be easy. Rebuilding will test our endurance and our resolve. But if there is one thing history has taught us, it is that Jamaicans do not shrink from adversity. We rise to meet it. We will face this challenge together as representatives, as neighbors, and as one people. Let us therefore lead with courage and act with purpose, knowing that the strength we show now will define the generations to come. Let us continue to demonstrate this love, unity, and compassion that define us as a people in supporting the recovery efforts of our country through the official website, supportjamaica.gov.jm. Let me repeat, that is supportjamaica.gov.jm. Together we will recover, together we will rebuild, and together we will emerge as a stronger Jamaica. Thank you, members. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think you have aptly captured the sentiments of the House today. Today, we will have a statement from the Prime Minister in relation to the passage of Hurricane Melissa. Madam Speaker, I ask that you suspend the standing orders so that the Prime Minister can speak until his conclusion.
Thank you, House Leader. Members, the question is that we suspend the standing orders to allow here at statement by ministers the statement by the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Defense, and Minister of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development to allow for the completion of this statement. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Let's make welcome to his feet, Prime Minister.
Thank you, members of this Honourable House. On Tuesday, October 28th, Jamaica endured one of the most punishing natural disasters in our modern history. Hurricane Melissa made landfall near New Hope in Westmoreland as a Category 5 hurricane with sustained winds of 185 miles per hour and a minimum central pressure of 892 millibars. Madam Speaker, experts described Melissa as being at the very edge of what is physically possible in the Atlantic Ocean. A storm powered by record sea temperatures and near perfect atmospheric conditions. Its force was so immense that seismographs hundreds of miles away registered its passage. Melissa is the very first Category 5 hurricane to make a direct hit on Jamaica in the recorded history of such hurricanes, surpassing the previous benchmark set by Hurricane Gilbert and recently by Hurricane Beryl. Melissa crossed the island with catastrophic winds and torrential rain, inflicting widespread damage, most severely across St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Hanover, Manchester, St. James, Trelawney, and St. Anne. We mourn lives lost, and we stand with the thousands of Jamaicans who have lost their homes, farms, businesses, and livelihoods. I extend condolences to the bereaved, and I salute our first responders, public servants, local authorities, community leaders, and volunteers who have worked around the clock to protect life and to begin the recovery process. In keeping with the Disaster Risk Management Act on October 29, the government formally declared the entire island a disaster area, giving the government the powers needed to prioritize life-saving actions, open emergency funding channels, and coordinate an all-of-government response. We also issued mandatory evacuation orders for specified high-risk communities in the immediate lead-up to the landfall of the hurricane. These decisions were taken on the advice of the Meteorological Service and ODPEM to save lives and expedite the restoration phase, which is now underway. On October 30th, following updated guidance from the Met Service and ODPEM, the government issued the national all-clear to commence full restoration and damage assessment activities. Non-essential government offices reopened the following day, and special provisions for impacted public sector employees and ministries were activated. Madam Speaker, it is important for the Jamaican people to know that long before Hurricane Melissa made landfall, the government had moved decisively to prepare the nation for its arrival. From the moment the Meteorological Service signaled the potential for rapid intensification and a direct strike, we activated a national response protocol and placed the country on high alert. Early warnings were issued by ODPEB and the Met Service. Emergency communication channels were engaged to deliver timely, accurate updates. And as forecasts worsened, we escalated our preparedness posture and public advisories. To ensure legal authority for swift national action, the government issued an order under the Disaster Risk Management Act declaring Jamaica a threatened area, and a complementary order under the Trade Act to prevent price gouging and protect consumers during the state of emergency preparedness. Madam Speaker, the government also allocated 1.5 million Jamaican dollars to each constituency prior to the passage of the hurricane to assist with preparedness. And on average, Madam Speaker, each constituency would have gotten at least $3 million for drain cleaning and other civil works in preparation for the hurricane. Hundreds of designated shelters, schools, churches, and community centers were opened and manned by trade personnel with relief supplies pre-positioned in the most vulnerable parishes. Evacuation guidance was issued for high-risk coastal areas, and we had social workers and local disaster coordinators and the security forces assisting in standing up these shelters, Madam Speaker. Critical systems were secured, airports, seaports, and utilities activated disaster response teams, ministries established command posts, the National Work Agency undertook urgent drain cleaning, bridge inspection, and slope assessment in known hazardous areas, while the National Water Commission worked to protect treatment infrastructure and urge citizens to store water safely. The Jamaica Public Service, our telecommunications providers, and health facilities implemented emergency protocols and prepared backup generation and response crews. The security forces, the JDF and the JCF, were placed on heightened readiness to support rescue, maintain order, and assist local authorities. Simultaneously, the government engaged the food, fuel, and transportation sectors to safeguard supply chains, while the Fair Trading Commission and the consumer and various other consumer agencies monitored markets to uphold a zero-tolerance stance against price exploitation. Public communication remained constant and transparent, with frequent press briefings and emergency bulletins emphasizing vigilance, community support, and protection of the vulnerable. Madam Speaker, the government approached this storm with seriousness, urgency, and unity of purpose to protect life, preserve order, and prepare the people for the fury of a Category 5 hurricane. Though the damage was immense, our proactive measures ensured Jamaica faced Melissa with the greatest possible state of readiness to safeguard our people and enable a rapid transition to relief and recovery. Madam Speaker, as we move forward from the initial shock of Hurricane Melissa, the government's response is being guided by a clear, structured, and disciplined framework. We are pursuing recovery through 4 overlapping phases: immediate relief, emergency relief, stabilization, and recovery, and then long-term reconstruction and rebuilding. Each phase carries distinct priorities, but all share a single purpose: protecting the lives and dignity of our people and restoring our nation with greater resilience than before. The immediate relief phase began even before the hurricane had fully passed. In those critical hours, our priority was to safeguard life and maintain essential order. Search and rescue operations were initiated in affected communities as soon as it was safe to deploy teams. Emergency shelters continued to operate at scale, ensuring food, potable water, and medical services for displaced families. Our uniformed services secured critical infrastructure, while ODPEM, municipal disaster teams, and volunteers coordinated life-saving interventions. This phase focused on urgent humanitarian needs, clearing access routes for emergency response personnel, and stabilizing high-risk areas to prevent secondary loss of life. Then we entered the emergency relief phase, the phase in which we are now. This phase includes clearing and reopening primary road corridors, accelerating the restoration of power and water systems, and expanding mobile and community-level distribution of relief supplies. We have also mobilized medical outreach to shelters and affected districts, while ensuring psychosocial support for children, elderly persons, and vulnerable families. International humanitarian assistance, including airlifted supplies and technical teams, began to arrive and integrate with Jamaica's national response system during this stage. The central aim of this phase is to relieve suffering, reestablish safe access to communities, and stabilize essential services across the island. The next phase will be the stabilization and recovery phase, which focuses on helping families and businesses regain a sense of normalcy and restoring the foundations of daily life. This includes bringing schools back into operation as quickly and as safely as possible. providing targeted support to small businesses and farmers, restoring public transportation routes, and accelerating the repairs of government buildings and community facilities. Households whose homes are habitable will begin returning from shelters, while those whose properties were destroyed or severely damaged will receive temporary housing assistance and construction support. Utilities will complete permanent repairs, and municipal authorities will operationalize debris removal and rehabilitation programs. This stage is about rebuilding confidence, reestablishing livelihoods, and supporting Jamaicans as they resume work, school, and community life. Finally, Madam Speaker, the reconstruction and rebuilding phase will ensure that Jamaica emerges stronger than before. This phase will see major capital works begin to rebuild, and climate-proof critical infrastructure, including roads, bridges, water treatment plants, health facilities, and power and telecommunication network. We're going to see those being built out. Housing reconstruction will prioritize stronger building standards, improved drainage, land use guidance, and support for our formal construction systems. We will partner with the international development institutions, private sector actors, and regional allies to secure financing and technical expertise. Throughout this phase, we will apply the principle of building forward better, ensuring that public investments not only replace what was lost, but reduce risk and improve resilience against future climate-related events. This is the phase where we overcome the adversity caused by this shock and come out ahead with modernized frameworks and long-term planning for better resilience against future shocks that will be inevitable. Madam Speaker, Hurricane Melissa was not only a national tragedy, it was a warning. The storm's 13-foot storm surge on our western coastline and up to 30 inches of rain in the Central Highlands revealed the devastating power of a new climate reality. The era of once-in-a-generation hurricane is over. In fact, the era of being hit by a hurricane once every 30 years is over. Imagine we were hit by Beryl. Then immediately after that, a tropical storm, almost 6 weeks of consistent rains, and then this year, then drought, and then this year to be hit by a Category 5 hurricane. So, climate science confirms that storms are now intensifying faster, moving slower, and carrying more rain than ever before, emerging from warmer oceans and testing the limits of our infrastructure and preparedness. The combination of wind, storm surge, and rain, as we saw with Melissa, creates cascading failures of infrastructure that storm scientists call a glimpse into the Caribbean's future. At the same time, Jamaica's vulnerability is not limited to hurricanes. We are an island in a seismically active region, and our communities remain at risk of earthquakes and associated hazards such as tsunamis. The multiple hazard risk profile means that our investment in resilience must span across sectors and hazards rather than being narrowly focused. We have to mainstream resilience in everything that we do. But, Madam Speaker, Nature's power does not have to determine our fate. Resilience is not beyond us. It is within our control. Regional experience from the not-too-distant past is illustrative. Consider the contrast between two earthquakes that occurred in 2010. In Haiti, on January 12th, a magnitude 7 earthquake occurred. And in Chile, on February 27th, a magnitude 8.8 earthquake occurred. The earthquake in Chile was more powerful, yet it resulted in fewer than 800 deaths. Whereas in Haiti, the earthquake caused over 300,000 fatalities and the near collapse of their infrastructure. What is the difference? What does it reveal? It is not simply geography or tectonic power. It is the presence or absence of resilient infrastructure, building standards, institutional preparedness, and resource capacity. That is the lesson for Jamaica. Every repaired bridge, re-roofed home, and rebuilt road must be designed for the storms of tomorrow, not the storms of yesterday. Our hospitals, water systems, and power grids must be restored and upgraded to higher standards. Our coastlines strengthened through mangroves, reefs, and natural defenses, and our agriculture sector diversified and climate smart. Investing in resilience is a strategic necessity, and for a country whose GDP is closely tied to tourism, agriculture, and natural resources, a single large-scale disaster can wipe out years of progress and impose long-term fiscal and social costs. By building better now, we reduce future repair bills, shorten economic downtime, protect lives, and preserve our national development trajectory. Also, Madam Speaker, let me remind all Jamaicans that resilience is not solely the job of the government. It is a national project that requires every community member, every business, every agency, and every parish to participate. Because in a world where storms will become stronger, quicker, and more unpredictable, our greatest defense is preparedness. Madam Speaker, it is clear that Hurricane Melissa will have a profound economic impact on our country. The storm struck the heart of Jamaica's productive belt. It tore through our breadbasket parish of St. Elizabeth. It disrupted our tourism corridor, stretching from Westmoreland through to St. James and into Trelawney and St. Anne. And it inflicted heavy damage on housing, community infrastructure, commercial operations, and public utilities across multiple parishes. Thousands of households now face the loss of homes, crops, equipment, and small enterprises. This is not only a humanitarian crisis, it is a shock to livelihoods, incomes, and local economies. Madam Speaker, detailed assessments are still underway, but I wish to share very preliminary, high-level estimates only to illustrate the scale of the devastation. Based on benchmarks from comparable regional disasters, physical damage to housing, commercial buildings, roads, electricity, water, and telecommunications infrastructure is estimated between $6 to $7 billion US, equivalent to roughly 28 to 32% of last year's GDP, last fiscal year's GDP. It is, members, a major hit to our economy. And I want the country to appreciate that we have never had a disaster of this magnitude with this economic footprint in terms of the impact. Not Gilbert, not Ivan, all of those were relatively small to our GDP. To lose 30% of your GDP is significant. So, still preliminary. I believe it is conservative based upon the damage that we have assessed, but the relevant public agencies are doing their assessment in addition to what they have to collate from the private sector. And so I would say in another few weeks we should have what the real figure is, but we can use this as a benchmark based upon what other countries would have been impacted and what we have observed and what has happened to us here in Jamaica with a Category 5 hurricane. We anticipate a temporary slowdown in economic activity, particularly in the most affected parishes. Agricultural output will decline in the short term as farmers replant and livestock operations recover. The tourism sector, while resilient and working swiftly to reopen, will require targeted support to restore capacity and confidence. Small and medium-sized enterprises, especially those in retail, manufacturing and services, and the creative industries, have sustained significant losses and will need liquidity and recovery support to rebuild inventories, repair their facilities, and restart operations. At the same time, supply chains for food, construction materials, and consumer goods are being actively restored, though some market disruption may occur in the immediate weeks ahead. A very preliminary estimate suggests that short-term economic output could decline by 8 to 13%. Madam Speaker, this means that revenues will decline as well as economic activity slows, even as expenditures must increase to finance emergency relief, recovery, and reconstruction. This will place pressure on our fiscal targets. Pressure is a euphemism. As we did during the COVID-19 pandemic, my administration will act responsibly, transparently, and with foresight to protect lives and livelihoods while preserving Jamaica's hard-won macroeconomic stability. In this regard, it will become necessary to activate the lawful provisions under Section 48C of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, which allows for the temporary suspension of the fiscal rules in certain circumstances of national emergency or extraordinary economic disruption. We anticipate a rise in the debt-to-GDP ratio in the short to medium term as resources are channeled into rebuilding and resilience. Yet, Jamaica's record for disciplined fiscal management provides the credibility and space to respond decisively. The sacrifices that we have made and how this government has administered our fiscal affairs would have put us in the best position that this country has ever been to respond to a disaster. Our focus remains clear: to restore livelihoods, protect the vulnerable, and ensure that Jamaica emerges from this crisis stronger, more resilient, and more competitive than before. However, Madam Speaker, it is also important to state that restoring economic activity must proceed alongside relief and restoration efforts. This is not insensitivity, it is necessity. Reviving production, reopening tourism, and restarting commerce are essential to restore incomes, rebuild confidence, and mitigate the wider economic shock. recovery is not just about clearing debris. It is about getting Jamaicans back to work and our economy back on its feet. We are already activating the fiscal and financial instruments available to us and engaging our international development partners to support the recovery effort. Cash flow support to households, emergency social programs, concessional financing, and targeted industry assistance will form part of a responsible and disciplined economic response. The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service will bring further details to this Honourable House as assessments are completed and funding packages finalized with our multilateral and bilateral partners. But I want to say, Madam Speaker, that 40% of the island has been impacted from an economic perspective. It means that the other 60% of the island must double our economic output. Fields destroyed in St. Elizabeth, in Manchester, in Westmoreland, must be replaced by fields brought into production in St. Thomas, in St. Mary, in Clarendon, in St. Catherine. The other half of the island that is not impacted, we must increase our output. Madam Speaker, this is a good point for me to say that there is a notion emerging that somehow we are getting a lot of aid and there's a lot of money coming in. Yes, we have made provisions, but all of that is temporary. And at some point, all of that will dry up. And the government must be able to stand on its own 2 feet. And manage its finances, because while we intend to ensure that the relief phase is efficiently conducted, the recovery phase might be extended. And therefore, with not just the loss of physical assets, but the requirement to spend on increased social safety net, vulnerable, welfare and social support, we will have to have the revenues to support it. And so I repeat the point, Madam Speaker, that economic recovery is not an insensitivity to human suffering. Economic recovery, it is the way in which we bring human suffering to an end early. And those persons who are opposed to us going back to school and going back to work, get that out of your mind. Get the economy up and running right away. That is the only way we are going to be able to fund the recovery quickly. And I urge all Jamaicans to get that mindset in. For the half of Jamaica that has not been affected, your productivity will have to increase right away. Madam Speaker, Melissa dealt a severe blow to our national road network and public infrastructure. The National Works Agency reports that 151 roads were impacted island-wide, with landslides, fallen trees, flooded corridors, scoured pavements, and breakaways, rendering many communities temporarily inaccessible. At peak, 134 roads were blocked, particularly across the western parishes, most directly in the path of the storm. I'm pleased to report that through urgent mobilization of national and private resources, more than 1/3 of the affected corridors have been cleared or reopened to at least single-lane access. Priority has been given to corridors serving hospitals, airports, seaports, water treatment plants, and emergency shelters, ensuring that life-saving assistance and relief supplies can reach communities swiftly. This recovery effort is a testament to the determination and discipline of our technical teams and the spirit of Jamaican partnership. The NAA has deployed 14 parish-level technical field teams supported by engineers and administrative staff and working hand-in-glove with the Jamaica Public Service, National Water Commission, ODPEM, and the security forces. We have also activated the full capacity of Jamaica's contracting ecosystem. Major contractors, including our Spark project partners, Czech, and local road maintenance firms are assisting with heavy equipment. The private sector has stepped up. Bauxite companies, housing developers, and other equipment owners have volunteered machinery and operating time. I want to thank them. Community members armed with chainsaws and machetes have joined the effort, and we express our gratitude for their assistance in clearing some of our roads. This is the Jamaican spirit at work. Simultaneously, technical teams are assessing bridges, river training structures, retaining walls, coastal revetments, gully systems, including the Sandy Gully and the north and south coast gullies, and the National Traffic Signal Network. Once access is restored across all affected communities, we will transition from emergency access to full road rehabilitation, including surface reconstruction where roads have been washed out or undermined. Restoring drivability on major corridors and designing long-term resilient solutions will form a core part of our national reconstruction plan. Madam Speaker, on housing and shelter, Melissa has caused extensive damage to the nation's housing stock, particularly in western parishes. Leveraging the National Geospatial Intelligence capacity, the government has, for the first time in our history, executed a rapid, high-resolution national housing damage assessment. This effort, coordinated through the National Spatial Data Management Branch and supported by international technology partners, analyzed more than 428,000 buildings across Jamaica. Satellite data and drone verification indicate that approximately 116,000 structures sustain severe or catastrophic damage, concentrated in Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth, and Manchester. These findings are now guiding targeted relief and reconstruction planning across communities. This is a big change, Madam Speaker. In Beryl, we didn't have this capacity, but we have since invested in, and we are now able to have more definitive and scientifically driven data as to the extent of the damage. This now will help us in budgeting, and it will help us in allocating resources. Madam Speaker, we are now transitioning from emergency sheltering to stabilization and repair. The ministry is conducting field verification in priority communities with housing support teams working alongside the JDF, ODPEM, and local authorities. As access is restored to additional communities in the West, we will complete our beneficiary verification, accelerate roofing support, and deploy building materials, tarpaulins, and rapid repair kits to ensure safety for and habitation for our citizens. The data now being integrated into the post-disaster needs assessment will shape a resilient housing and building recovery program. Minister Montague has been asked to lead the process of determining the kinds of housing solutions and how they will be deployed, because we have to utilize new building technologies, including prefabricated and containerized solutions to deploy rapidly. And so we are examining those options to see what is available that can be rapidly deployed. Minister Montague has been tasked to spearhead that program, and he has already convened a technical working group to ensure that when we actually get out to give houses, which is very soon, we have solutions that match the problem, but solutions that are easy to deploy and cost effective. With regard to electricity, restoration of power is proceeding in phases, prioritizing hospitals, water plants, communication backbones, and dense residential zones. The all clear for restoration of utility services enabled JPS and independent contractors to enter the field at scale, while the Ministry with responsibility for energy is coordinating grid stabilization and resolving localized issues such as low voltage and restored feeders. Yesterday, the JPS would have given an update on the status of electricity restoration. The government has given them strategic direction to make a priority to restore large commercial and urban centers in addition to critical public facilities. Moreover, they have been tasked in their grid restoration efforts to explore relocating, where feasible, the grid underground. We have given them directives regarding Montego Bay, the Elegant Corridor, and the Hip Strip would be two areas where focus should be given to put the grid underground. If other areas are feasible, going underground is expensive. So we have to balance between expense and getting the grid up. But if we are getting the grid up and we can get some resilience in it, then we have to get the resilience in. So we will balance as we can, but it wouldn't be possible for all the grid that we have to put back up to put it underground. But in areas where it makes strategic sense, then we are encouraging them and indeed directing them to ensure that that is done. We will continue to update the country on a parish-by-parish basis on re-energization percentages as the network is repaired and rebuilt. Quick word on Petrojam. Petrojam has maintained fuel supply continuity despite flooding at its Montego Bay terminal. The cleanup is complete and structural and electrical assessments are underway before resuming western loading. In the interim, all tanker loading is being conducted through Kingston with extended operating hours to ensure uninterrupted national fuel availability. In terms of water, Madam Speaker, Hurricane Melissa has significantly disrupted water supply across the country, with the operational capacity of the National Water Commission deeply affected by power outages, blocked intakes, turbidity, landslides, and damage to electromechanical systems. Several key NWC offices, including those in Mandeville, Santa Cruz, Bogue, Falmouth, and Morant Bay, have been forced to close due to flooding, structural damage, and loss of access, while others continue to operate under constrained conditions. In total, more than 631 water systems were initially affected island-wide, with western parishes experiencing the most severe disruption as electricity supply remains limited. Supply restoration has been heavily reliant on generator power, where grid access remains unavailable, which means intermittent service in some areas. Even so, progress continues. Approximately 66% of NWC customers now have supply restored, with St. Catherine, St. Thomas achieving restoration rates above 87% and 84% respectively. The NWC has deployed approximately 40 generators to potable water facilities and 8 to wastewater plants, and has supplemented this capacity through private rental arrangements to stabilize service delivery. Madam Speaker, you'll recall that in Beryl, we weren't able to have this level of water restoration, primarily because we didn't have backup power for NWC. We learned the lesson, and we started to, one, a program to have all our major water supply have independent backup, and that is being worked on. But in the interim, we secured backup generation capacity, for which we are now benefiting from, Madam Speaker. The Minister of Water will give you more details on the recovery. But, Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to inform this Honourable House and the people of Jamaica that all members of Parliament will be allocated the following sums for the trucking of water. $2 million to the following constituencies most affected by the hurricane: Westmoreland, Hanover, St. James, St. Elizabeth, Manchester, and Trelawney. $1.5 million to selected constituencies in the following parishes: St. Catherine, St. Andrew, Clarendon, and St. Anne. Funds will be we will allocate some other funding, which the Minister will explain. But, Madam Speaker, we have $1 million to constituencies in the following parishes: in Clarendon, in St. Anne, and in St. Catherine, to certain constituencies. And I won't call out these names, but the Minister, well, there's $1.5 for some constituencies in St. Catherine, in St. Andrew, Clarendon, and St. Anne, because they are particularly affected. I don't want to go through the detail of calling out each constituency, but $1 million for others. In terms of telecommunications, Madam Speaker, after the all-clear, utility crews mounted full field activities with cross-sector coordination to restore poles, repair fiber and power cell sites. Public Wi-Fi nodes and critical government communications are being prioritized in affected town centers. To restore nationwide connectivity, 600 Starlink terminals are being deployed to first responders, government facilities, NGOs, members of Parliament, and councillors. Now, Madam Speaker, not all members of Parliament have been provided with Starlink capabilities, but certainly those who are critically affected, like the member from Eastern Westmoreland and Central Westmoreland, and but the affected parishes have been provided. Flow and Digicel continue rapid recovery, with up to 86% service restoration reported in some categories. Additional spectrum was allocated to carriers to accelerate repairs. The government will also deploy roving mobile teams, which is an important service. The government will deploy roving mobile teams with Starlink connectivity and charging stations to affected communities and urban spaces to allow residents to make contact with loved ones or make short, urgent calls. In terms of public transportation, the Jamaica Urban Transit Company infrastructure and fleet remains mostly intact, with only minor structural damage and limited operational disruption reported. The Portmore Depot experienced minor damage to the perimeter wall and electrical systems. Spanish Town saw minimal impact, and Rockford had minor ceiling damage. The Montego Bay Depot had significant infrastructure damage, with 4 buses sustaining severe damage. Fuel dispensing has been altered as electric pumps are inoperable, and the depot has no generator. 10 buses from the Montego Bay fleet can be mobilized once minimal power is restored to the facility. Additionally, some drivers are marooned in their communities due to blocked access roads and poor communications. Now, despite infrastructure damage, air navigation services have been fully restored nationwide. Radar and air-to-ground communication have been re-established with support from Airtel. A 24/7 landing permit operation is in effect for humanitarian flights, and monitoring of unmanned aircraft, drones, is being strengthened to protect aviation safety. All airports reopened within 48 hours of the storm. Relief flights began on October 29th, and commercial passenger services resumed on October 30th. From October 29th to November 2, airports processed 350 flights, including 162 commercial flights and 117 relief and military missions. Domestic air drones, including Negril and Tinson Pen, are also operational. I want to spend a little bit of time on public health and our mental health response. Madam Speaker, the health system has been tested in an extraordinary way by Hurricane Melissa. Even before landfall, the Ministry of Health and Wellness activated its Health Emergency Operations Center and deployed response teams across all regions. Hospitals transitioned to emergency-only services, and health centers remained open to support communities until safe conditions emerged. These early preparedness allowed the health sector to move quickly into its emergency response posture once the storm passed. The hurricane has caused severe damage to several major health facilities, particularly across western parishes. The Black River Hospital in St. Elizabeth, our type C hospital in that parish, suffered catastrophic roof loss, structural failure, and complete utility disruption, requiring the evacuation of 71 patients to Mandeville and May Pen. The Falmouth Hospital in Trelawney lost most of its roofing and suffered extensive flooding, compromising electrical systems and diagnostic and clinical equipment. The Cornwall Regional Hospital, our key Type A facility in Western Jamaica, lost more than half of its effective capacity, including severe damage to temporary wards and the accident and emergency department. Noel Holmes Hospital and the Savlon Lamar Hospital similarly sustained serious roof and water damage, with power and water outages affecting patient services. These facilities are currently providing limited emergency services while staff continue rapid discharge where clinically safe and access to equipment integrity is needed. In primary care, the picture reflects a scale of national disruption. In the southeast of Jamaica, approximately 2/3 of facilities, and in the southern regions, 2/3 of facilities, are expected to have full operations within days. In the western region, where the impact was more severe, we expect a longer time for recovery for our primary healthcare systems. Several health centers have suffered significant structural damage, and temporary clinical spaces are being arranged to ensure continuity of care, especially for maternal health, chronic disease management, and child health services. To stabilize service delivery, the ministry will establish temporary field hospitals in the hardest hit parishes. These will provide emergency, inpatient, and outpatient capacity while permanent facilities are repaired. The ministry is also mobilizing medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, oxygen, and essential equipment to critical sites while conducting urgent testing and certification of hospital equipment to ensure safe reuse. Beyond clinical services, we are aggressively addressing post-disaster public health risks. Flooding, stagnant water, and sanitation disruption create favorable conditions for mosquito breeding and the spread of waterborne and vector-borne diseases. Public health teams are deploying enhanced vector control operations, including larvicide distribution to 120 households. A fogging campaign is being mounted now, Madam Speaker, with the support of private contractors and expanded field staff. Water quality monitoring is being intensified at all treatment plants with chlorination and turbidity testing to protect the population from gastroenteritis and hepatitis A and other water-related illnesses. Food safety teams are inspecting facilities and supervising safe disposal of spoiled food and livestock carcasses. Sanitation and other management operations are being strengthened to protect communities and reduce disease transmission. Madam Speaker, beyond the physical destruction and the economic disruption, the toll of Hurricane Melissa on the hearts and minds of our people has been profound. Families huddled together as winds howled and floodwaters rose. Parents worked desperately to shield their children from fear. Elderly Jamaicans, some recalling storms of decades past, relived deep anxieties as they once again face nature's fury. Many of our brothers and sisters have endured the unimaginable, the loss of loved ones, the loss of homes built over a lifetime, and the loss of lives and livelihoods that sustained entire families. There are thousands who, even now, are sleeping in shelters or with relatives, searching for stability in a world abruptly turned upside down. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the state must also address the emotional and psychological burden of the disaster. And by the way, Madam Speaker, it would not only affect our constituents, even members inside here are impacted. And I saw the grief palpably expressed by the member from Southern St. James. It is the impact of the hurricane, Madam Speaker, especially for our children. For many of them, they cannot come to grips with what has happened, to the disruption of their lives going to school, to the loss of people in their community, just the disruption in their regular meals. They are trying to come to grips with that. And with the hurricane also comes a break in order. Not having meeting with their friends and going to school, being cut off, not being able to communicate, all of those have severe mental health impact. And as I visited the Falmouth Hospital, Madam Speaker, that was an issue raised, and I was quite surprised that it was, by someone who was at the hospital, who was brave enough to say, I am a mental health patient, and it was very important that I got the services here, but we need more mental health services because our people are reacting to this crisis in ways that are becoming antisocial. And therefore, we must pay attention. I want to give the nation the commitment that the Ministry of Health is augmenting its psychosocial and mental health operations, as it also seeks to mount its conventional health response. And now is a good time, Madam Speaker, to call for volunteers who are trained in this regard to reach out to the Ministry of Health, because we simply would not have enough trained professionals on staff to mount the kinds of response that would be necessary. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the education system. Assessments are still underway, but we already know that many schools, especially in the western parishes, have been severely damaged or destroyed, and others across the island have also been affected. At present, 446 schools serving nearly 150,000 students face major disruption. We have all seen the images: roofs lost, classrooms flooded, learning tools destroyed. Many schools also face extended outages of electricity, water, and internet. The situation in the western parishes is particularly grave and poses a real risk of significant learning loss. Our children need their classrooms and the structure they provide. Every day out of school is a day of lost opportunity. Yet, Madam Speaker, we must also be pragmatic. The doors of many schools cannot reopen immediately. So while we move with urgency to repair and rebuild, we must act now to resume learning through innovative and flexible arrangements so that no child is left behind. After Hurricane Beryl, we responded swiftly, aided by the timing of the summer break. This time, we must move even faster, as Hurricane Melissa offers no such reprieve. Our focus will therefore be on three clear priorities: safe reopening where facilities permit, continuity of learning through blended, remote, and alternative sites where needed, and accelerated reconstruction to return schools to permanent classrooms, to return students to permanent classrooms as soon as possible. Madam Speaker, we successfully navigated the education system through the global pandemic and the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. We will do so once again. We will get our children learning safely, swiftly, and in stronger, smarter schools than before. At the peak of the emergency, Madam Speaker, approximately 15,000 Jamaicans were accommodated in official shelters. Shelters will remain open as long as needed, with food, water, medical support, and psychological services will be provided through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security and the Ministry of Local Government. Madam Speaker, specifically in relation to marooned communities, of which there are likely in excess of 30 marooned communities, the JDF is in the process, or has already established, 22 humanitarian assistance and disaster relief outposts in the following areas: in St. Elizabeth, Burnt Savannah, Newmarket, Springfield, Burnt Savannah. Well, but there's an error on my presentation, nevertheless, because they have Savannah Lamar under St. Elizabeth, which, of course, that's Westmoreland. So that was the error. In Westmoreland, Sav, Darliston, Lennox, Bigwood, Bluefields, Betheltown, Amity, Beeson Spring, Catch Valley, Frome, Roaring River, Content, Glenbrook, Reno, Catadupa. I hope I've gotten all those names correctly. And all the members. Katalupa is St. James, South St. James. And in Trelawney, Cambridge, South St. James again. Adelphi is you. Adelphi is East Central. Well, they tagged the parishes incorrectly. Maroon Town, where is Wire Fence? South Trelawney, Jackson Town, Falmouth, and Perth. So these are all the communities. I hope the members of Parliament would have noted the establishment of these. They will be establishing more outposts as they are able to stand them up. And the objective is that these will serve as humanitarian bases in what they call a hub and spoke operation. So right now, they were moving humanitarian aid through airlift and other means directly to the various communities. Now the phase that they are transitioning into is to move it to the hub, where they can store a lot, they can do 24-hour movement, and then from the hub to all the communities, including communities that are maroon. That way we can scale up rapidly the response to communities that have not yet been serviced. A lot of this is Westmoreland. A lot of what we have said is Westmoreland. Madam Speaker, just quickly on security and order response. The national security architecture for the country has been fully mobilized in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. From the earliest moments of this disaster, the Jamaica Defense Force and the Jamaica Constabulary Force have stood at the front line of our national response, upholding order, saving lives, and ensuring that essential relief reaches our people. Their efforts have been heroic, and the nation owes them deep gratitude. The Jamaica Defense Force moved with urgency immediately after the storm's passage. Within hours, troops established a forward disaster relief site at the Luana Community Center near Black River and began clearing block routes, many on foot, to ensure ambulances, utility crews, and relief agencies could reach our most vulnerable communities. Madam Speaker, I think here I should give you and the nation first-hand experience. Madam Speaker, the day immediately after the hurricane's passage, I asked the JDF to facilitate an aerial tour. But I sent my forward team to meet me in Black River. When we landed in Black River, having circled 3 or 4 times to find an appropriate landing site and getting communications, we recognized that the team that we sent could not pass through Holland Bamboo. It was totally blocked. And the JDF, along with residents, came out and they started work. When I returned from that tour, I went to Sav and other areas, went back home. I got a call from one of the officers in charge saying that they were cutting their way up to 4 a.m. the following morning. The entire stretch was blocked. It was compounded because there were vehicles trying to get in, blocking the convoys, and it was chaos, but they managed. And it is good that we have a reserve of logistics capabilities and an engineering and operational force like the JDF, that we call on them in times of disaster. Madam Speaker, the JCF is not to be outdone, because whilst we look upon the police mainly as a security force, you would be surprised that they fill the gap, being the social worker, being the firefighter, helping with medical issues, in addition to, well, the commissioner led the way with his power saw cutting down trees, but you can see that they were multifunctional in the disaster, and again, commendations to them. So, Madam Speaker, the JDF did suffer some losses. Several bases in the Western Command, including Frome, Paradise Park, Montpelier, and the Black River Coast Guard Station, were severely damaged. And we will ensure that these are rebuilt very quickly because that's important to stand up the operations. Working with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the JDF has established a major relief hub at Up Park Camp, producing and distributing more than 11,000 family care packages delivered by both ground convoys and helicopter missions, including support from the U.S. Chinook aircrafts. This operation represents the highest standard of joint civil-military coordination and underscores the discipline and capacity of our armed forces. We also recognize and appreciate the international cooperation that has strengthened our security response. Support has come from the United States Southern Command, the government of El Salvador, with 287 personnel deployed, Canada through its operational support hub, the United Kingdom with an offshore patrol vessel, and regional partners including Belize, Bermuda, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and the Cayman Islands, which have provided support and aerial support, including helicopter support. This international solidarity has, and Venezuela has provided humanitarian relief. This international solidarity has significantly boosted our humanitarian and security operations. Madam Speaker, even as the JDF has worked tirelessly in the field, the Jamaica Constabulary Force has executed its mandate to maintain public order and protect infrastructure. More than 12,000 police officers were mobilized across all divisions before the storm's arrival, with incident command centers activated and integrated into the national and parish emergency operations. Following landfall, the JCF immediately transitioned to securing communities, protecting hospitals, water facilities, Petrojam and our airports, and escorting relief supplies into affected zones. I'm pleased to report that due to early planning, strong community cooperation, and visible police presence, we have had no major looting or disorder incident to date. Madam Speaker, I am aware that there are persons calling for the implementation of emergency measures, states of public emergency or curfews. Madam Speaker, these are being considered, but we are very sensitive to the current situation, and we do not want to impose further hardship on persons by imposing a security measure. At some point, however, when we have established, as we are now doing, the hub and spoke for a supply chain operation to ensure that there is a consistent flow of relief into communities, that will have to be protected. And therefore, we will have to put special measures around the routes that have to be traveled and protecting the areas where they are stored and distributed. As well as, Madam Speaker, we have to consider the availability of the human resources. And so there are areas that are sensitive that we will have to man and have regular foot patrols and the like. And therefore, it may become necessary in moderating that to have curfews and other measures put in place. But we are not at that point just yet. But these things are being planned out so that the security operations don't come into conflict with the humanitarian situation that currently exists. Madam Speaker, the eyes of the world have been on Jamaica as we confronted this ordeal, and the outpouring of solidarity has been extraordinary and deeply moving. The generosity to us shown to us reflects Jamaica's high standing and goodwill on the global stage. Even before Hurricane Melissa's landfall, messages of support and offers of assistance came from every region of the world. Since then, our relief efforts have been fortified by early and tangible aid from bilateral partners, regional and international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and the Jamaican diaspora. We are especially grateful for the outreach of His Majesty the King, the United Nations Secretary General, and many other heads of government who have conveyed their solidarity with Jamaica. We extend heartfelt thanks to our CARICOM brothers and sisters and regional agencies such as SEDIMA, CARFA, and the Caribbean Development Bank for their immediate engagement. Our bilateral partners from Belgium, Canada, Colombia, El Salvador, Venezuela, the European Union, the Dominican Republic, France, Germany, Luxembourg, India, Mexico, the Netherlands, Peru, Spain, the United Kingdom, the United States. A list that is, I have not exhausted. China, Japan, they've all committed support. And, Madam Speaker, what we have to do, in addition to the NGOs, which I haven't even mentioned, there are so many of them, but permit me to say the World Central Kitchen, Doctors Without Borders, Global Empowerment Mission, we call them GEM, Direct Relief, Samaritan's Purse. And of course, our own Food for the Poor. Madam Speaker, on our supportjamaica.gov.jm, which was built in record time by the Amber Group, which is the central hub for donations to Jamaica from the diaspora and the world. We have so far raised 170 million Jamaican dollars in contributions on that platform. And I encourage Jamaicans and our friends all over the world to give. Supportjamaica.gov.jm. All contributions go centrally to ODPEM, which is the government's official disaster management agency. Madam Speaker, I wish to make some important announcements as to how we are going to be managing the disaster. Madam Speaker, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, is the central agency for the government's disaster response. They work with all the critical agencies across government, the private sector, international aid agencies, and multiple governments. It is, however, clear that the response to Hurricane Melissa will require significant logistics experience. It will also require significant coordination. The Jamaica Defense Force is currently assisting with the logistics support to both ODPEM and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, especially given the fact that many communities are situated in difficult terrain and several have been marooned. Given the nature of the response needed for the current relief effort and the coming reconstruction effort, it is important that ODPEM and the JDF have even greater levels of collaboration. As such, effective immediately, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, is reassigned to the Office of the Prime Minister to strengthen logistical collaboration with the Jamaica Defense Force. Madam Speaker, the Jamaica Defense Force is already under the Office of the Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, This move will ensure that the relief effort is well coordinated and coordinated across government. The best place to achieve that, given the nature of the crisis and the speed with which we want the recovery, is for it to be centrally positioned in the Office of the Prime Minister, which is what the Office of the Prime Minister does. It coordinates all the entities. This realignment establishes virtually a single point for emergency logistics and further tightens coordination with relief partners. This is about speed, Madam Speaker. The new arrangement will accelerate the distribution of relief supplies in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa, better serve the most affected communities, and restore normalcy as quickly as possible. Madam Speaker, from a strategic perspective, and it is important that this be said, I've just listed the level of international response and NGO response. One of the things we don't want to happen is any fumbling. So logistics and coordination is absolutely important. And what we will create, Madam Speaker, is a plug-and-play system. Government can't do it all. We are the first to recognize that. We don't have enough helicopters. We don't have enough social workers. We don't have enough engineers. We don't have enough doctors. But what we want is a coordinated system where all of the goodwill that comes, whilst we get that benefit, but we must get one other thing from that, and that is synergy. And you can only get synergy where the sum of the parts are greater than the whole, when you have coordination. And that is the one thing that this administration has been good at in the management of crises and disasters. So we are going to create that plug-and-play operation to take advantage of the goodwill. At the end of the day, the people who are giving to Jamaica must say it was worth giving and I will give more. At the end of the day, they must say I am satisfied that my efforts achieve something and I can see it visibly because it was not interfered with by bureaucracy, lack of coordination, territorialism, or corruption. So we are going to make sure that we display to the world a first-class relief and recovery and rebuilding operation. Madam Speaker, the passage of Hurricane Melissa has left debris, disruption, and dislocation in communities across the island. To accelerate recovery and restore order, the government will launch a national cleanup week. The Minister of Local Government already explained what that will be, but it will be the mobilization of the NSWMA, the NWA, and other entities that have capacity with the removal of debris. Now, it may very well be a cleanup month based upon the level of debris that has to be moved. In this effort, the members of Parliament will be called upon to play a critical role. There is a sense, Madam Speaker, that I've heard being bandied about that some members of Parliament were not integrated into the operations, or that there was some kind of favoritism where some constituencies got and others didn't get. Madam Speaker, let me stand here and say that there was never any intention or action on this government designed to marginalize, discriminate, isolate, alienate any member of Parliament. And we must dismiss out of hand any argument that would seek to divide this country politically when it comes to the distribution of aid. As far as I'm concerned, every Jamaican is entitled to the aid that comes in and to the spending of the government. There will be no politicization of aid. It never happened in COVID, it never happened in burial, and it will not happen. Madam Speaker, I can point out to you that the member from Eastern Westmoreland made his public comments. I saw them. I reached out to the leader of the opposition. I recognized your pain in what you said. I saw your public comments. I recognized the pain in what you said, and I asked the member from Southeast Clarendon, the Minister of Labour and Social Security, to reach out to you. It is only a matter of logistics why I was not able to land in Darliston or in White House. My friend, if the helicopters could have landed me there, I would have landed there, and I would have been by your side if I could find you. There was no attempt whatsoever. And the suffering of Jamaicans in your constituency, the suffering of Jamaicans in the constituency of Northwest St. Elizabeth is of concern. There are constituencies over here that we have not reached. Southern Trelawney, we haven't reached. Northwestern St. Elizabeth, we haven't reached. So all I'm saying, Madam Speaker, and to Jamaica, I must stand up firmly and close the door on any attempt to politicize aid in Jamaica. So in the cleanup, Madam Speaker, in the cleanup, where we are going to need the MPs to be active, we are going to need the MPs to be active in mobilization, because we won't have enough people to send into communities to clean up. It will have to be the communities, leader of the opposition, that do the cleanup. You have to mobilize the people. But it is also an opportunity for communities that have not had a chance to earn anything. We are going to try to put together a little stipend. Let me say it's a little stipend. It's not a pay. We will provide, colleagues, we will provide a stipend to assist the restart of economic activity through the cleanup. It's a small stipend. They will be able to go to the shop if shops are open. They'll get a little cash in hand to restart. That's the objective. But it does require, however, value for money. And that is why we're going to need the MPs there to ensure that we get the value for money. And I think that is only fair. The program is being developed. We will have to budget it, but you can start to prepare for that program. The minister very shortly will come and announce how that program will operate. But we really need to move the debris because it's a health hazard as well as an economic obstacle in many instances. In terms of housing support, Madam Speaker, across the island, our first priority has been to deliver food, water, and medical support to every affected community. But we know that beyond these essentials, the greatest need is now shelter. Too many of our brothers and sisters have lost the very roofs over their heads. To address this urgent need, I am announcing a building support program for households in the most affected parishes as follows, and this will be an MP-driven program again. St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Manchester, Hanover, St. James, Trelawney. $10 million will be allocated to each constituency in those parishes. You know, there was a debate in this House about whether or not any distribution to MPs should be done on a constituency basis equally. And I am of the view that every seat is equal. But in a disaster, that cannot hold. In a disaster, that cannot hold. In a disaster, that cannot hold. And I hope that MPs who were not as badly affected will not put pressure on me to make increased allocation. And so 10 million to the affected constituencies. Let me repeat: St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Manchester, Hanover, St. James, Trelawney. For St. Anne, Manchester, and Clarendon, $5 million will be allocated to each constituency. For St. Anne, Manchester. Oh, sorry. Oh, thank you for it. Thank you for reminding me. No, it's in there. Unless they made an error correcting it. But Manchester really should be the 5. I will resolve it. No, there might very well be an error in it, but yes, no. I mean that Manchester really should be 5. But let me resolve it. You're really listening. I appreciate that. All right. I will resolve it. Forgive. There's an error, obviously, in the speech. I will resolve it. I will resolve it. And for the other constituencies, $3 million per constituency. I think it's a fair distribution based upon everything that we have to go through. The letters, we will send the letters out, and I will resolve the issue with Manchester. Madam Speaker, in addition to this, the National Housing Trust has activated a comprehensive package of support measures to help its contributors and mortgagors recover from the devastation caused by Hurricane Melissa. First, I wish to remind the public that all NHT mortgages are insured under the Trust's House Owners Comprehensive Policy, which covers damage from hurricanes, storms, floods, fire, and other perils. The NHT has already mobilized its branches island-wide to help mortgagors prepare and process their insurance claims quickly and efficiently. Second, recognizing that many families will need time to prioritize home repairs, the NHT will grant an automatic 6-month moratorium on mortgage payments for mortgagors in the worst affected parishes: St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Hanover, Trelawney, St. James, Manchester, and St. Anne. This measure will assist some 20,000 homeowners. For all other parishes, the NHT will continue to consider individual moratorium applications for those who have lost income or face special hardships. Third, the Trust will introduce a special home improvement loan of up to $3.5 million at an interest rate of 2% available to both existing mortgagors and contributors who need to repair or rebuild their homes as a result of the. Finally, to further ease burdens, the NHD will provide a special grant of up to $500,000 to contributors to repair damage to their homes for those who the NHD will provide a special grant of up to $500,000 to contributors to repair damage to their homes or those of immediate family members. So we have kind of extended it a little bit. Grants will be awarded based on demonstrated need and the level of impact. So this is an assessment-based grant. Madam Speaker, we're also working with our international partners and the private sector to identify housing solutions, as I said before, that can be rapidly deployed at scale across most parishes, and as I said before, Minister Montague is working on that. There are some really viable, pre-built, prefabricated housing solutions. They may not be block and steel, but they are very durable and can be rapidly deployed as shelter solutions. Madam Speaker, in addition to the $1.5 million that had already been allocated to each constituency before the hurricane, which was for emergency relief, food, medicine, tarps, and so forth, I'm announcing an additional $1.5 million, which the leader of the opposition already announced it for me yesterday. The nation should know that we talk. And it looks like I'm telling him too much because he's announcing the things before I... But the leader of the opposition correctly got that one. So there will be another $1.5 million for MPs to use for the emergency response. But this one would be now mostly focused on food, medicine. Now, Madam Speaker, to speed the flow of humanitarian goods, the government had approached customs. Madam Speaker, to speed the flow of humanitarian goods, the government had approved customs duty and GCT exemption for the importation of relief supplies for one month, expiring November 28th. Recognizing that recovery efforts are ongoing and will extend beyond this 1 month period, we will extend this relief period by a further month to the end of December 2025. This measure will ensure that every shipment of relief supplies can reach our people quickly, efficiently, and without additional financial burden. In addition to the eligible items already announced by the Jamaica Customs, and in consideration of the extent of the damage to the electricity grid in the most affected parishes and projected timelines for complete restoration, I am announcing that persons will be allowed to import Starlink equipment and other such equipment, inverters, and solar power equipment, including panels and batteries, free of custom duty and GCT. Madam Speaker, this is in an attempt to get power and communication back into the communities that really need it. That really need it. Now, I know others will take advantage of it, but I appeal to every Jamaican. If you can buy 2 Starlinks and send one to a family or a community, do it. If you can buy solar batteries and solar panels and give it to a community or to a household in the affected parts of Jamaica, please do it. I will look into that because they are already giving a loan. But I know that when we give up these revenues, others will benefit from it who don't really need it. So I've asked Jamaicans to use your conscience. Ensure that the other half of Jamaica that is suffering now benefit from this relief. Madam Speaker, while the needs across our nation are indeed great, we must also remain judicious and disciplined in the use of public funds. So, Leader of the Opposition, I couldn't give $50 million just so. Because, Madam Speaker, we have the bill coming from health. We have the bill coming for cleaning. We have the bill coming for schools. We have the bills coming for JDF and JCF. We have the bill coming for agriculture, for tourism, for water, not to mention the bill for roads. So, Leader of the Opposition, as I say, you know, it sounds good, but it's wishful thinking. We couldn't do it. And the truth is, Leader of the Opposition, we may very well over a period of time do it. But at this present time, we have to literally be very careful with how we spend. So the truth is, Leader of the Opposition, you know, as we speak, we see that there are other weather systems forming. You know, we don't know. So we just have to be very careful with the resources that we have. And that's why I give the assurance that what we have will be fairly shared for every Jamaican. I want to announce two other things. In the COVID pandemic, we established an oversight committee of Parliament to review the work of the Ministry of Health in its operations. We will establish a similar oversight committee of Parliament to review the distribution, welfare, relief operations. I've given a direction to the House Leader to speak with the opposition leader of opposition business to establish that committee, the terms and how it will work. Madam Speaker, it is in the interest of the government to have the highest level of transparency in what we do. There is no victory for JLP communities to have food and PMP communities not. There is no victory, or vice versa. None whatsoever. And therefore, we will put in place every measure to ensure that whatever is given to us and whatever we spend from our budget, fairly done, everybody can see it, and everyone benefits. So as soon as we meet again by the next Parliament, that committee should be in place. A special joint select committee possibly that will look at the operations. All right? Madam Speaker, in a time of crisis, every Jamaican wants to participate. One of the greatest challenges you face in a time of crisis is to organize goodwill. It is, a Leader of the Opposition, it is a real challenge to organize goodwill. Because there are some people who want to come and go on their own. There are some people who are saying, tell me what to do. And there are some who will tell you what to do. And can become very confusing, bearing in mind that government operates by law and a particular structure. And it is very difficult to get people who have to operate by law to operate outside of that, meaning that you could have people with goodwill coming and say, do that, do this, but the agent who has the legal responsibility say, I can't take an instruction from you, or I have to see something in writing, or it has to go through a process. And so I have had to be spending my time in structuring the cabinet, in structuring how our permanent secretaries and others in government operate, to bear in mind that whilst we have the legal framework, there is an emergency, and therefore we have to operate with more speed and alacrity because there is human suffering that we are trying to minimize. That in itself is a task that the public will never see and probably will not understand. But that is why you have government. That is government business. Government must deal with that. And that is what I have been doing. And yes, we recognize the calls that have been made about establishing that committee or putting that. Of course we know that. We have never operated outside of that framework. We should, however, recognize that the history of our country is that the government does not stand on its own. Never has. Constitutionally, we are probably the only country where the leader of the opposition is entrenched in the Constitution. That it means that I can't go off on my own as Prime Minister. We'll take a ride together. Yeah. But it is the nature of our democracy. Our churches play a fundamental role in governance. So too our private sector. The question is now, how do you bring all of that together in a framework that satisfies everyone's purpose for participating, but at the same time delivers the best result for the people? That takes a little time to work out. We have people who have international reach, international influence, people in high offices all over the world. We have to put in place a structure that, so if they were to use their office, it's meaningful. They don't meet up on red tape and bureaucracy and then get frustrated and say, I can't bother with Jamaica. So before I pull people in, I have to make sure that when they come in, there is something meaningful for them to do. And we have been building that out. So I've had a discussion with Prime Minister Pattison and Prime Minister Golding. Yes, they are former prime ministers, but I always refer to them as prime ministers, because that is the respect I pay to them. So I've had a discussion with them, and they are eager to help. But we have to find the right mechanism as to how they can give support. And we are in dialogue as to how that could happen. There are other Jamaicans in high offices all over the world calling me up, I want to help, I want to help. We are working out how that can be. Now, in the phase that we are, which is the relief phase, there's not so much to do other than to make sure the logistics work. Because in the relief phase, what you need is that aid comes in, it moves to a storage area which is central, you record it, which is what ODPEM does, and then the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the Ministry of Local Government say, hey, here are the communities, here are the people, and the JDF works out the logistics for movement, where private sector vehicles and other vehicles and trucks and whatever can assist in moving them to the hub in the region, and then they are broken down into spokes into various communities. And that is what we are trying to establish now, because that supply chain operation has to stand up for at least 2 months. And then, of course, Parliament has to have oversight on it. Why is this community getting and not that community? Hey, you forgot that community. Hey, you should put some more. That's what the Oversight Committee will do. And that's how that relief I'm expecting will operate. But we will have to immediately, almost in parallel, transition to recovery, where we have to answer difficult questions. Should Black River be where it is? How do we build a resilient town in Black River? What are we going to do with Falmouth? Precisely. What are we going to do with the hospitals? Should we rebuild these hospitals with zinc roofs? And schools. All of these are questions that we have to work out. And there are political issues involved, and so it really does need that kind of senior, experienced politicians, statesmen who have been in the system long, who can help that conversation along in order to make these massive changes that are needed to make Jamaica resilient. So as we get into those discussions, you will see the importance of having persons like our statesmen, people of influence and high regard in the society, guiding debate, convening, and giving support. And that is being structured as we speak. This is a crisis, Madam Speaker. And it is one thing that we must never do, is waste a crisis. The other word for crisis is opportunity. And this is an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to make Jamaica stronger. So as I close, Madam Speaker, I want to thank all Jamaicans who have participated in the national effort to ensure that we are recovering, that our brothers and sisters in the other half of the island that was struck, that they are getting relief. It is not perfect. I'm certain that as I speak, there are communities now that have not yet been reached, that there may very well be bodies that have not yet been collected. I'm certain that there is a child that is hungry as I speak. But as I speak, I know, Madam Speaker, that the systems are being rapidly put in place to ensure that that human suffering comes to an end very quickly. And I know that with unity, togetherness, genuine unity and togetherness, Jamaica will recover and recover stronger. Madam Speaker, there is the National Partnership Council. Again, a feature, has become a feature of our government. I intend to call the Partnership Council either this week or early next week, depending on diaries and availability. And in that, under that umbrella, we will have the churches and all the other civic organizations to have this discussion around national unity for recovery. And it can't only be a discussion. There has to be commitment to unity. And as I stand here, Madam Speaker, I am committed to a unified approach to the recovery. So, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the House and thank listeners and thank Jamaicans for paying attention to this presentation. God bless Jamaica.
Responding will be the Leader of the Opposition. Prime Minister, could you turn the mics off?